Hello and welcome to another edition of the Power BI Monthly Digest. My name is Devin Knight, and I'm here with
Matt Peterson.
and we're excited today. We are showing you some of the new features that were launched with the August edition of the Power BI desktop. And so we're going to be looking at a few features. There's not a ton this month, but there's some pretty impactful ones, I think.
Yeah, not as robust, so this one will be easier to digest, I think, for August. See what I
Hey!
did there? Okay. Try to make it a little bit fun.
So the first feature we're going to be looking at today is really focused around this concept of personalized visuals. So personalization of visuals came out a few months ago, and we covered that in a previous monthly digest. But one of the updates that's come with it recently is that the capabilities of perspectives, and we'll describe what that is here in a moment if you're not familiar with those, has now been implemented within the personalization of visuals.
Oh, that's going to be great.
Yeah, so the idea here is, let's say, for example, you give one of your users the ability to actually personalize a visual from the Power BI service. And let's say you're dealing with a very large data model that has a lot of different tables, a lot of different objects. What perspectives allow you to do is to give them basically a filtered down view of the tables that they should care about within that page they're looking at.
So it's like not overwhelming them with all the columns and all the fields?
Right, exactly. Now, one thing to be clear that we want to make sure we state, and if you read the monthly blog that comes out from the Power BI team, they state this as well. Perspectives are not to be used as security. This is purely a usability feature just to make it so that it's easier to see the tables that are most relevant to the page they're looking at on the report.
All right, I might have some more questions about that security once we start getting into
All
this.
right, fair enough. So let's go ahead and hop into our first demo here and take a look at this feature. All right, the way I'm going to show this one is I'm actually going to go back over to our Power BI desktop here, and I'm going to use this one here that Matt has. And what I'm going to do in this Power BI desktop is I'm going to start by showing you how perspectives work. Now, perspectives are a feature that are commonly thought of and commonly found in analysis services tabular or analysis services multidimensional. However, with the feature that was released last month with the external tools capability that came out recently, you can actually add perspectives to a regular Power BI desktop model as well. So what the tabular editor here will allow us to do is add some analysis services features like calculation groups, which we showed in our last video. You can now also do perspectives. So I can add a perspective to my Power BI data model, and I can't really do it anywhere else. There's no feature in the Power BI desktop to do perspectives. But by launching the tabular editor, which will probably launch on my other screen, I'll have to move it over. See? There it is. Let me pull it over to the right screen. So by launching the tabular editor, I can now create this concept of perspectives. And again, it's not a security feature, but what it allows me to do is provide to my users a simplified view of my data model. So let's say, for example, in this data model, I have 8 or 9 tables here. But what if I had dozens of tables, 20, 30 different tables?
Too many tables.
Too many tables, right? So what perspectives allow my users to do is to see a filtered view of those tables to just the things that are applicable to the report they're looking at, okay? So it doesn't prevent them from seeing everything else, but it just makes it so that whenever they're working with a personalized visual feature, that they will just see the tables available to them. But if they go to another report page, they could potentially see a different perspective with a whole another list of tables available to them.
Okay, I like that.
All right, so I'm going to start by creating a couple perspectives here. I'll create one perspective here we'll call Demo Perspective 1. And we'll create a second one here. We'll right-click on perspectives.
Demo Perspective 82?
82, yeah, no.
I'm probably 2? Okay.
I'm coming up with super unique names here. Now, how you would typically name these is you would likely name them by business area. So if I had something like a perspective where I wanted to focus on internet sales and another one to focus on in-store sales, I might split it that way, perhaps.
Gotcha.
Now, if I want, I can add the tables below here to those perspectives. So you might add some tables to both perspectives. Say, for example, internet sales and date probably makes sense to have in both perspectives. So I can right-click on a table and tell it that I want to show in all perspectives. And I can right-click on date and do the same thing, show in all perspectives. But then some of the other tables I might want to restrict to just certain perspectives. And I'm using the word restrict there, but again, this is not security.
Okay.
So I could say maybe sales territory is only available in perspective 1, maybe product is available in perspective 2, and you can kind of determine based on business area how you might want to split these things up.
Now, is it an all or nothing? So like if I didn't want to include the whole table, so let's say my table has lots of columns, am I able to choose just specific columns to show in a perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can actually drill in deeper. So if you right click on or go into a table, you can actually go specifically within a table and say, now if I were to give it access to one column within the perspective, it's going to show the table and then that column. The
Okay.
other columns won't be shown there. So
Okay.
you have some neat capability to go even more detail if you wanted to. Then once you're happy with that, you'll hit the little publish or save button up at the top. And I'm going to do a little cooking show action here to show you one that's already completed, because sometimes you have to kind of close and reopen to get the model to show those perspectives. So here's one that I've already got the perspectives included in.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah, right. So I have my model here that has already got the perspectives added to it. And so what you can do is you can set on each individual page. So this is a setting of the page, not a visual, not all the pages, but you could do it to all the pages.
I definitely thought it would have been visual since we're talking about personalized visuals.
That would make sense, yeah.
So it's a page format. Okay.
Right. Yep. So you would actually, if you want to change the settings of this, you would go to the page format. You would click somewhere in the background of the report, and then you would go over to the format section on the right-hand side. You click on the little format paintbrush. And then you'll see there's a section here called Personalized Visual. Now, if you don't see this setting, then there could be a couple things that you need to do. One, you need to actually turn on Personalized Visuals for this report. So just a reminder of how to do that, because it's a fairly new feature.
Mm-hmm.
You would go under File, Options and Settings, Options. And then underneath the report settings, you'll find there's a section here for Personalize Report Reader to Personalize Visuals, or allow Report Reader to personalize visuals. So when that's checked, you'll have this feature come back available to you. The other thing, remember I showed you the external tools and the tabular editor?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't turn on this feature right here where it says Store Datasets Using Enhanced Metadata Format, those options will be grayed out. The external tools won't be available to you unless you check this option as well. So that's one other thing I need to make sure I tell you as well. All right, so you can see we have most of the preview features turned on. One of these features Matt's going to show a little bit later. All right, so with the preview feature turned on, I can find over on the right-hand side, when I have the background of the report selected, there is a format option called Personalized Visual, and the default is default fields, which basically just says show everything. So you'll see model in here, you'll see default fields. That's kind of like defaulting to show the entire model for your users. However, what I can do is I can actually tell it per page which one of the perspectives I want to make available to my users. So if I say this one's perspective 1, for instance, you could tell it you want to apply this to all pages, or you can go page by page and actually pick which one of the perspectives will be used. And you can see here I've already done it ahead of time on a few of these.
All right. And the personalized visuals, because I know it was a new update, you don't personalize the visual really in the desktop. This is something that's going to happen out in the service once we share, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So my next step would be is I would go ahead and publish this. And then from the Power BI service, you'll see this little personalized icon. So let's take a look at it. Let's actually pop over to the Power BI service for a moment. So I'm in the web browser now. And this is the same report we were looking at a few moments ago. And you'll see there's an option here that I just showed you in the desktop also exists within inside of the Power BI service. And so if you select the Personalize This Visual option, you'll see that it will provide you, when you click on the shared access, or if you click on anywhere where you can change a field, whenever you go in here, you'll notice that right now I am only looking at Demo Perspective 1. And so it's only showing me the tables that are within inside that perspective. If I were to go to another page, so let's say I go to Data Lasso page and try and personalize this one over on the right-hand side here, you'll see now I'm looking at Demo Perspective 2, and I'm only seeing the fields within inside of that perspective. So you do have the ability to select it per page. Maybe eventually they actually do go per visual. But right now, per page, you can select which visual, which perspective each one is able to use. Okay. All right. So let's flip back to our on-screen view. All right. So we talked about a pretty cool feature, I think. The next one's also kind of a neat feature. It's a feature that Tableau has had. So one of Power BI's competitors had for quite some time. But it's the concept of Data Lasso, right? So talk us through that.
Yeah, and so about 3 months ago, they just put the lasso effect in. So if you wanted to select multiple visuals to do a whole bunch of formatting changes all at once, it was just really easy. Could we just do control clicks? Of course, but if we can make things easier, why not make them easier, right?
Sure.
And so that's what they decided to do in terms of selecting data points. We can now, instead of just do a control click of all these data points, we can control click. We can now just lasso it all around. So let's take a look at that and see how it works. All right, so we're going to pull up. I got another one over here for us. And what we're going to do here, going to show off this data lasso. So if I wanted to take a look at the United Kingdom and Canada, and I wanted to have all of my other visuals be cross-filtered based on them, I could then click on United Kingdom, which is great, and then I would have to do a control click over here on, let's say, Canada, and the visuals are updated respectively. Fine, nothing wrong with that feature. However, with the data lasso effect, what we're going to do is, let's say I wanted to get everyone from France to the United Kingdom. And so I'm going to do a control click and then hover over with my drag and drop. And now let's take a look at what happens. So I've got all these in my lasso, so to speak.
That's
now
cool.
all of them are done. So it's just a quicker process. Are there some limitations to it? There is. Only 30 data points can be selected at a time. So right now I think I've got 8 of them. So I'm about a third of the way there of what Power BI can currently handle. So again, a nice new updated feature. And I can definitely see where it can save some time for our end users.
Awesome. So pretty cool feature. Glad to have it there. That makes it life a lot easier for those end users, like you said. And then I think next we're going to look at some modifications they've made to Q&A, right? Talk us through that.
Yeah. So there's always been that question, what do we do? Direct query or import? And large data sets, direct query, you have some performance issues, but you can see all of that data fresh. No scheduled refresh is needed to be. But the two big limitations that we've always seen is, what if I want to use time intelligence with DAX? Sorry, that's not supported yet. The other thing, though, was what if I wanted to have the Q&A experience that we have in our models, which we could do with imported data, could never have done it with the direct query until this update. So with this update, we can now use the Q&A experience with the direct query report.
Nice.
And it made a few little bit of modifications. It's going to look a little bit different for users that have used Q&A in the past. So let's take a look at how it is just a little bit different. So the way that this is a little bit different, so I have a direct query report up here, and we can now see an actual Q&A visual, which we wouldn't have even had that option in the past. So let's bring this over in. And what we see, first off, remember they did update Q&A last month, or the month before. It's hard to keep up with what month they do the updates. We see a little bit of a different user enhancement here of how things are shown. And one of the things that we would do at this point is start typing in a question. And so let's go with what city had the most internet sales. And usually at this point, we would start seeing some populated results in our answer. But I don't see anything. Well, why is that? Because up here, we see that we now have a new button, which is our submit button. And when we submit this, what that is allowing us to do is not have all these queries running down at the exact same time. So there's only going to be one query sent back for the performance issue to be resolved here. And so we see that our answer is looking like Abingdon, which had the most internet sales amount. So this is a nice feature. All the other Q&A features are still there. The thing to notice, though, is that direct query is supported, but only for a few resources. So SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, and Azure Synapse Analytics will support this feature.
Very cool. Very cool. I like it. So getting some enhancements to direct query and Q&A together. I love it. All right, cool. So I think the next feature we're going to be looking at is back on the visual side as well, and looking at a map that maybe hasn't had some love in some time. So tell us about the changes with the ArcGIS map.
Yeah, that's a good. It hasn't had some love in some time. That's true. The ArcGIS map visual, they've made it a little bit easier to use. They've added some extra enhancements for the final end user to either be able to do things or restrict them from doing certain things. Again, what we're going to show today is with the free account. But if you want even more functionality, you can pay for that ArcGIS map account. So let's take a look at what has been changed about it. So what we're going to see that's been changed about it is first, when we put it onto our actual report. So bring it over here to report. It looks a little bit different with the sign-in feature, but that's not the big issue. The big issue that's going to come in is the formatting that we can do. And so again, if you don't have an account, you can automatically start this in terms of just making sure you have a latitude and a longitude data in your data model. And for this one, we do. So this is one that we use quite a bit with our failed banks. And I have some latitude, which I'm going to bring over into the latitude area. Now, one thing I have realized for this report, sometimes ArcGIS will try to average out this numerical column. And when I bring it in here, it didn't do it this time, so fantastic. But if it ever did, you would just change it in the modeling ribbon. but we're going to bring over latitude and longitude, and we should see all of our cities, which is great. I'm going to make this take up the whole space. That's all we're going to deal with here. And I can zoom in by using my mouse wheel. And let's make it a little bit more dynamic. I'm going to bring in the bank name here for the size. So the more banks that have failed in a city, the larger the bubbles are going to be. And so if we come up here, we can see Chicago's got the most. And we'll come down here. We are in Florida, so might as well. Let's focus in on Florida. And what if for this data set, your end user is really, you only want to focus in on the Southeast region, and you don't want your end user to be overwhelmed with anything else.
Right.
Well, that is one of the new tools that they've offered us.
Okay.
So we come over to, with the visual selected, we come over to the formatting pane. And on the formatting pane, what we're going to do is go down to the map tools. And the first one we're going to showcase here is the lock extent. And it pretty much does what you would think. If you click it on, which we do, we now have locked this.
Nice.
I cannot drag and drop this over. So if that's something that you think would be important for your end user, you now have that functionality. The other thing is you can decide to keep your zoom tools on or off. Now, if you don't have the zoom tools on, we simply use our mouse wheel. So let me turn the lock extent off so that we can actually do this. But if you want it to make it a little bit more in the face of the end user, we can turn our zoom tools on, which we now see down here in the bottom left. So 2 new features there. However, there are some more features that they've added. If we come down here and expand this out, the only way currently to get to your layers, if you've added extra layers to this map, is we would have to expand this down, and we come down and we then click on our layers. And we now get our layer list, which is great. However, maybe you're giving this to somebody who doesn't have as much experience with the visual, and you don't want them to have to go through that whole process. Well, we have a fix for you. So I'm going to show it basically, this is the default view. What we could do now, if we wanted that layer list to be right up in their face, down here where we have layers, so I'm formatting the visual layers, anchor, I'm going to turn anchor to on. And when I do that, it anchors it in place. You know, it's not moving anywhere. It's an anchor. So it's always going to show up here whenever the report is loaded. Now, Devin, do you like it on the left-hand side?
Not particularly. You're covering up a lot of data points here right now. It'd be nice if you could move it to a different part of the map so it doesn't cover up anything. Can you do that?
I think I can, especially if I would have locked this, right? Then this would have been showing data. There was data in the background that we never get to really see. So they added that. They were already thinking about what you, Devin, probably wanted. And they said, let's put this layer position, we're going to move it over to the right-hand side. So move it to the right.
Oh, that's perfect.
And now it's anchored. So that's the first thing. So now we have 2 different options. We can either, I'm going to turn this back off. We can have our end user have to expand this down, click on layers, and then get it. We could have it in their face with the anchor option. But what if you don't want layers at all? Well, then we just come to show layers. We just turn it to, on here, on and then off, in which it would not be shown.
Okay.
All right, so once I turned the anchor off, it went automatically to off. So if it's on, we get the layers. If you don't want them to ever be able to see the layers, we now turn it to off.
Nice.
So the last thing that we can do with this, the last functionality that they updated is to be able to pin an address on your map itself. So if we go to the search bar here, search icon, I guess it's not really a bar, and we're going to come in here and we're going to enter in an address. And as we find this address, it's going to pin it on our map for us. And I'll talk while doing this as well. Something to know is that once you close out your report, this pin that you have placed on the visual, it is not stored. It will not show up here again when somebody else opens this up. So, well, what if you really want somebody to see this or you want to reference this in a future scenario? Well, then you would need to make a bookmark on the service. And again, we're showcasing this all on the desktop, but all this functionality is there on the service as well. But you would want to make these decisions if you're giving somebody only the read view to where they can't, mess with your report. You would have to make all of these decisions about the visual. You want the anchored layers to be there or not, you would have to make it here in the desktop.
Matt, I feel like this could be pretty depressing. Like if I had crime data and I pinned my address and said, show me all the crime around me, and it just pops up all over the place. That would be pretty depressing.
It would be. I agree.
All right, good deal. So the last element that we're going to be looking at is not really a change in the Power BI desktop, but more the Power BI service. Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah,
okay.
That's the kind of last big update. They do custom visuals that are updated, but for what I think for our end users, this is probably pretty important to know about.
Yeah. So what we're going to be looking at in this last demonstration is to show you some changes that they've made really on the organizational custom visual side of things. So this came out, gosh, probably more than a year ago now, maybe multiple years ago now, where you could actually set up what custom visuals were organizational visuals, meaning you could actually develop one for yourself and make it available to your end users to find when they're in the Power BI desktop. Or you could even take other ones that others have developed and make them organizational visuals so that your users know that these are ones that are kind of approved by the organization.
Okay.
So there's a couple settings that they've made changes to in regards to this. One is you can kind of turn on or turn off that feature. And then the other thing that they've done is they've made it where you can tap directly into AppSource now, and so you don't have to upload a file like you used to in the past.
Oh, you just do it right from the service.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's take a look at this one. It's a pretty quick one to show. All right, so what we're going to do in this one is I'm going to launch open my web browser right here. And from within the web browser, we're going to go to the Admin Center. You may or may not have access to the admin portal here. Just depends on if you're a Power BI admin or not. You may see it, but when you go to click on it, find that you don't have access to it. That's something you would have to work with your Office 365 administrator on. But in this case, I do have access to it, so I'm going to go to Admin Portal. And we're going to go underneath the tenant settings here. So underneath the tenant settings, one change that's been made available to you now is there is, if we scroll down a little bit underneath Power BI Visuals, there's a new section here that says Allow Visuals Created Using the Power BI SDK. And you can kind of determine whether or not you want that turned on or turned off for the entire organization, or do you want it to be enabled for individual users or not. So you have some flexibility of how this is going to be enabled at even a group or user level. What also was changed is you now have the ability within inside the organizational visual section here on the left-hand side to not only add visuals like you could in the past, this has been here for quite some time, but you can now choose whether or not you want to add them from either a file, which is the only way you could do it in the past, or you could do it from AppSource directly. So rather than having to go download the file from AppSource and then re-upload it here, you can skip that process and say, pull this from AppSource right away.
So they're again trying to save us time.
Absolutely. And we can tell it that we want it. Maybe we want the word cloud to be a new visual that's part of the organization. I can add that in here. And then you can see this has actually been up for quite some time. 2018, this feature's been around. But once that's been added, I can go back over to the Power BI desktop and any one of my tools, as long as I'm signed into my organization, which I am, and go underneath Insert and find underneath More Visuals from AppSource. This is where you would normally add a custom visual. And you may or may not have already noticed that there's been this My Organization section here for quite some time. If I were to select that, this would show me all the visuals that have been added within my organization. So the idea here is you may have your organization is kind of, telling you, hey, don't use anything on AppSource, just use the ones that are listed underneath My Organization, so that way we kind of have some control over it. Maybe we only want to have the certified visuals available, something like that. But you have more flexibility over how you can add those custom visuals to your organization.
That's a great feature. Again, saving time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's it for this one. So kind of a short one this month, but some good stuff that's been released. Of course, as always, if you're looking to get more in-depth than what we cover in this class, take a look at some of the training offerings that we have. We have 17 different Power BI classes to really take you much more in-depth than we can do on these short videos. Oh, yeah. Certainly recommend that. And we're also kind of always curious, what were some of your favorite features? Comment below. Let us know what your favorite feature was this month. We'd love to maybe dive in more in-depth into certain features if you had some interest there. So let us know there. And of course, you can always subscribe to continue to get videos like this from us and others. My name is Devin Knight. And
I'm Matt Peterson.
And thanks for joining us.